Summer cabins are supposed to be peaceful. A break from work, from noise, from everything. But what happens when the silence isn't empty? When you start to realize you're not alone out there. Tonight, I'm going to tell you the story of one family's summer getaway in the woods. One that started like a dream and ended in ways they still refuse to talk about. And the scariest part? Every detail you're about to hear could happen to you if you ever book a cabin this summer. They were an ordinary family. Mark and Dana, early 40s, 2 kids, 13 and 10. They lived in the city, cramped, noisy, suffocating. Summer was approaching, and they wanted one thing: silence. After weeks of scrolling through rental sites, they found it. A cabin 2 hours from town, tucked deep in the pines. No neighbors, no cell service, just a lake, a fireplace, and the promise of a week away from everything. The photos were perfect. The reviews? All 5 stars. Words like peaceful, untouched, private. Exactly what they needed. So on the first Saturday of July, they packed their SUV with groceries, fishing gear, board games. Windows down, music loud. They drove until the roads narrowed into gravel, until the GPS lost signal. By late afternoon, they pulled into a clearing. The cabin stood there, wooden, weathered, but beautiful. A wraparound porch, a dock stretching into the lake, and nothing but trees in every direction. It was everything they wanted. Maybe too perfect. Because here's the problem with cabins in the woods. They look so inviting in daylight. But when the sun goes down, every shadow feels like it's watching you. The first night was uneventful. They cooked, laughed, played cards until the kids fell asleep. Mark sat on the porch with a beer, staring at the lake reflecting moonlight. The quiet was almost unnerving. No cars, no sirens, not even crickets, just stillness. Around midnight, Dana thought she heard something, a creak, like footsteps on the porch. She froze in bed, listening. Nothing. Maybe just the cabin settling. But the next morning, when she walked outside, something caught her eye. On the far side of the porch rail, faint in the dust, were footprints. Bare. Too long. Too wide to belong to anyone in the family. Mark dismissed it. Probably the kids, maybe even his own shoes dragging. Dana let it go. Vacations weren't for paranoia, but she couldn't shake the feeling that they hadn't been alone their first night. On the second night, things changed. The kids wanted to roast marshmallows outside. They built a fire pit, sat under the stars, told silly stories. Then, around 10 p.m., the woods went silent. The crackle of the fire, their own voices, that was all. No wind, no insects, nothing. "Did you hear that?" their daughter whispered. They all listened, and that's when Mark heard it too. From somewhere deep in the trees, slow, deliberate snapping, like twigs breaking under someone's weight. Mark grabbed a flashlight, shining it into the woods. Nothing. Just blackness. The sound stopped. Dana wanted to bring the kids inside, but Mark laughed it off. Probably a deer. Maybe even just branches falling. But when they finally went inside, their son asked quietly, "If it was just a deer, why did it stop when we looked for it?" That night, nobody slept well. Every groan of the cabin, every gust of wind felt like something moving outside. The next morning, Mark found something near the tree line. At first he thought it was a branch, but when he got closer, he realized it was a small bundle of sticks tied together with twine, almost like a symbol. Someone had placed it there, intentionally. He didn't tell Dana, just tossed it into the fire pit and said nothing. But that evening, When the kids were watching TV, Dana pulled him aside. "Did you notice?" she whispered. "Notice what?" She pointed at the guest book on the coffee table, the one where renters signed their names, left little notes about their stays. On the very last page, in faint pencil, someone had written 3 words. "It watches us." There was no name, no date, just the message. Dana looked at Mark with wide eyes. "Tell me that was already here when we arrived." But Mark couldn't. That night, they locked every door, every window. Mark double-checked the deadbolt, shoved a chair under the handle for good measure. He told himself it was nothing. A prank, maybe. Some local teenagers messing around. But around 3 a.m., Dana woke up. The room was freezing. The fan was off, but the air felt cold, unnatural. She sat up, listening. That's when she heard it. A soft creak, floorboards groaning, directly outside their bedroom door. Her heart pounded. She shook Mark awake. He listened. The sound was gone. Mark grabbed a flashlight, stepped into the hallway. Nothing. Empty. But when he turned back toward the bedroom, he saw something that stopped him cold. The front door was wide open. The chair he had wedged under the handle was still in place. The lock was still latched. But the door stood open, as if it had never been shut at all. The next morning, Dana insisted they leave. She wanted to pack up, drive back to the city, and forget they had ever rented the place. But Mark pushed back. "We're not cutting our vacation short over a loose door frame," he argued. He said the cabin was old, maybe the wood warped, maybe the lock didn't catch. Logical explanations. Still. When they checked the porch that morning, there were more footprints, bare, leading from the tree line to the steps. And at the edge of the dock, where the kids had been fishing the day before, someone had left another bundle of sticks. This one wasn't tied with twine. It was bound with a thin strip of fabric. A red fabric, just like the t-shirt Dana had packed in her suitcase. She went upstairs to check. The shirt was gone. By the third night, the tension was unbearable. The kids were scared, Dana was furious, and Mark, stubborn, refused to admit anything was wrong. They all tried to sleep early, but sometime after midnight, the daughter screamed. Mark bolted to her room, flashlight shaking. She was sitting up in bed, pale, pointing at the window. The glass was covered in condensation, and on it, drawn with a finger from the outside, was a crude, childlike smiley face. Mark ripped the curtains shut, heart hammering. He told the kids it was nothing, but he knew. Someone was outside, watching, and closer than ever. That was the moment Dana realized the truth. It wasn't random. It wasn't kids playing pranks. Someone had been coming back, every single night, getting bolder. On the 4th day, Dinah took another look at the guest book. She wanted proof, something, anything, to convince Mark to leave. Most entries were normal. Families writing about fishing, couples talking about romantic weekends. But the further back she flipped, the stranger it got. One entry, dated last summer, read, "Beautiful cabin. Loved the privacy. Strange noises at night, though. Almost like voices outside the window. Still, would stay again." Another, dated 2 years before. "Perfect place to disconnect. Too quiet at times. Felt like someone was in the woods, but we never saw anyone. Probably just wildlife." And then, at the very bottom of the page, in different handwriting, not connected to any review, "You can lock the doors, you can shut the windows, but it still gets in." Dana snapped the book shut. When she showed it to Mark, he finally went pale. For the first time, he didn't have an answer. That night, they kept all the lights on. The kids slept in their room. Mark sat up with a baseball bat. Dana clutched her phone, even though there was no service. Around 1:30 a.m. it came, a single knock at the door. Not frantic, not loud, just one. Slow, as if whoever it was knew they were awake. Mark froze, bat in hand. Dana whispered, "Don't open it." Another knock, this time on the back door. Then silence. Mark waited. 10 minutes? 20? Nothing. He finally crept toward the back door, flashlight shaking in his hand. On the glass, written in condensation like before, were two words, "Still here." That was the breaking point. Dana demanded they leave at dawn. No more arguing, no more excuses. The next morning, they packed everything as fast as they could. The kids barely ate breakfast. Dana's hands trembled as she loaded bags. But when Mark turned the key in the ignition, the engine sputtered, then died. The car had worked perfectly the day before. Now it wouldn't even turn over. Mark checked under the hood. Something was missing. The spark plug wires, gone. Cleanly cut. Someone had sabotaged the car. They were stranded. No cell service, no neighbors, miles of woods in every direction. Dana suggested walking back down the gravel road toward town, but Mark shook his head. "It's 15 miles. With the kids, we'll never make it." So they stayed. Another night. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, Mark tried to act calm. He grilled hot dogs on the porch, cracked another beer. He told the kids everything would be fine. But Dana saw his hands, shaking. And later, when the kids were asleep, she heard him whisper under his breath, "They don't want us to leave." That night, they did everything they could to stay awake. Mark sat by the front door with the bat across his lap. Dana sat in the living room, staring out the window, watching the tree line. The kids eventually drifted to sleep on the couch, huddled together under blankets. And then, at exactly midnight, the generator cut out. The cabin went black. No lights, no hum, nothing but the sound of breathing and pounding hearts. Mark clicked on his flashlight, the beam slicing through the dark. He whispered for everyone to stay quiet. From outside came the sound of footsteps, slow, crunching in the gravel, getting closer. Dana's breath shook. She pressed a hand over her daughter's mouth to keep her from whimpering. Then came the sound of the porch steps groaning under weight. Whoever it was right outside. The doorknob rattled, turned, shook violently. Mark gripped the bat, ready to swing. Then silence. For a full minute, nothing moved. And then, from the back of the cabin, glass shattering. "They were inside!" Mark shouted, swinging his flashlight toward the kitchen. He caught just a glimpse, movement, a shadow darting past, too fast to make out a face. Dana screamed, pulling the kids toward the stairs. Another crash. The sound of footsteps running through the cabin. Mark chased after them, but the beam of his light caught only fragments. A hand disappearing around a corner, a pale arm, dirty fingernails. He shouted, "Get out! I'll kill you!" But the intruders didn't answer. They laughed. A low, muffled, broken laugh that echoed through the cabin. Dana dragged the kids upstairs into the master bedroom, slamming the door shut. She shoved the dresser in front of it, her hands trembling. They huddled in the corner, listening to Mark downstairs, swinging the bat, cursing, yelling. And then, silence again. No footsteps, no breaking glass, just the creak of the old cabin, and their own ragged breathing. The silence was worse, because it meant they were still inside, but waiting. Hours passed. Somehow they made it until dawn, without the intruders returning. When the first gray light broke through the trees, Mark checked the house. The intruders were gone, but they hadn't left empty-handed. In the kitchen, every knife was missing. And upstairs, on the bathroom mirror, written in thick black marker, were the words, "We'll wait." They couldn't stay another night. They knew that now. Mark scavenged through the shed behind the cabin, desperate for anything. He found a rusted mountain bike with one working tire. By noon, he made the decision. He would ride until he got service or reached a ranger station. Dana and the kids would barricade themselves in the cabin until he came back. He kissed them, promised he'd return. Then he was gone, pedaling down the gravel road, disappearing into the trees. For hours, Dana waited, clutching the kids close. But as evening fell, Mark hadn't come back. And as the sky darkened, the kids noticed it first. From the tree line, little flickers of light. Dozens of them, moving between the trees. At first, Dana thought they were fireflies, until one of the lights moved closer. Bright, steady, unmistakable. Flashlights, more than one, coming closer. She shoved the kids into the master bedroom again, barricading the door. From outside came the sound of crunching gravel, multiple sets of footsteps, the creak of the porch. And then, voices, whispering, too faint to make out words. One of them scraped something along the siding of the house. Another banged slowly on the wall. The kids were crying. Dana held them, whispering, "It's okay, it's okay," even though she knew it wasn't. Finally, from right outside the bedroom window, a man's voice spoke, clear, calm. "We told you to leave." That's the last thing Dana remembers. The next morning, a sheriff's deputy found her wandering down the gravel road, barefoot, covered in scratches, clutching her daughter's torn shirt. When they searched the cabin, it was empty. No kids, no Mark, no sign of forced entry. The only thing left was the guest book on the coffee table. On the last page, scrawled in the same handwriting as before, was a new message. "Ours now." To this day, Mark and the children have never been found. The rental listing vanished from the website. The owners claimed they'd sold the property years ago. And if you search hard enough, you might still find rumors about a cabin in the woods where people disappear and where every summer new footprints appear on the porch. So tell me, would you still book a cabin in the woods this summer? If you're brave enough for more true horror, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell